Good morning. It Good morning. It is Greg Ellers, and I am the host of the Employment Roundtable. Joined with me today are my co-hosts Alex and Jude. Jude and Alex, happy Saturday to you.
Happy Saturday from sunny Las Vegas.
And from
Oh.
not so sunny Boston.
I hear you. Well, this is our third week of the Employment Roundtable, and we've been getting some great feedback. We appreciate our listeners out there and our watchers with respect to our show. This week, we're going to touch on a topic that has been getting a little bit of news from the media side, and that is the challenges for Gen Z and other younger generations, for which all three of us admittedly are not a part of, but we like to think we have some advice, and that's going to be our topic because it is a hot button topic in the employment world today, because we do need these the different generations and cohorts stepping up as other generations leave the workforce. So today we'd like to talk a little bit in our roundtable regarding the generations, some of the challenges that employers believe that they have, and versus the preach aspect, which tends to turn everybody off, and this generation specifically. We just want to kind of come to where you are and share some insight, and maybe there'll be something for you to take away from our conversation today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jude, and why don't you go ahead and start us off, Jude?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an interesting topic because we are meeting a situation where the older generation is leaving and the younger generation is coming in to take over those open positions. So how do we come together and find a place where we're positioning you nicely for that space and for those positions that are vacant, and really preparing you and giving you the skill set that you need. So yeah, I think it's really interesting topic, and I would love to get a lot of feedback from folks on what their perspective is from both sides. But yeah, it's an interesting challenge for both. So I think I really want to preface our conversation today as really understanding that there is a complete understanding there's a lot of opportunity to learn from each other on both sides.
Yeah, totally no, that's a good point. So Alex, I mean, you spent, I tried to reach you a few times, and I don't know how many interviews you did this week, but I'm sure quite a few of them were with a little bit younger cohort. Why don't you touch a little bit upon the engagement of conversation as you get candidates close to jobs, and maybe some of the conversations you have with respect to explaining and sharing how they can get to the employer, the person they're teaching the job, versus having a position of indifference versus selling themselves in that process.
Sure. I might need you to repeat the question after, just because you said something that struck something in my memory bank. I remember, I don't know, I don't want to quote how many years ago, but it was some time ago, and it was when the millennials were coming into the workforce. So I don't want Gen Z to feel targeted, because this is an ongoing, every generation has their own nuances, their own, are a product of their environment. The world is changing. So when the millennials were coming into the workforce, it was a big topic then. There was news articles about it. I was running meetings about how the multiple generations can start to work cohesively together, because it was a big topic of conversation back in those days. So I don't want Gen Z to feel targeted, because I think this is something that is going to be just a topic worth discussing, even moving forward, because eventually Gen Z, I know you don't want to hear it, but eventually you're going to be in your 30s and 40s like the rest of us. And the generation that's coming after you, you are probably going to find some challenges with them. So it's really about all generations, whether you're on the boomer side or you're on the Gen Z side or any of us in between, figuring out how we work cohesively together. And that just means, I mean, as far as Gen Z goes, you might not want to hear what the baby boomers have to say, but you know what? They're in the hiring position. They are the ones hiring the jobs, and some of the millennials are now hiring. And so, you know, this is going to be, there's things to learn from everybody. There's things for the boomers to learn from Gen Z, and there's things from Gen Z to learn from the boomers. So there's things that everybody can learn from each other. And I think that's what we really need to keep focusing on during these conversations, is that it doesn't matter what your age is, it doesn't matter what background you come from, there is something to be learned from everybody, and there's something to be learned from every situation. So, you know, to your point, Greg, of how to keep people engaged, even from an interview perspective, or even from when you start a job, I think it's all about the way we communicate with one another, the way you deliver things, you know. So for example, what I have discovered with some of my phone interviews that I conduct is if I have a phone interview scheduled with someone for 9 a.m. and I call you at 9 a.m. and you're yawning and you sound like you've just woken up from bed, you know, that's already immediately a red flag to me, because as a initial phone screen, I am basically your first phone interview. And if you are yawning or saying, oh, you know, I just woke up, can you call me back in 10 minutes to get some coffee? You know, that's not exactly giving the best impression right off the bat, because if this is a scheduled interview with me, I would expect, because this is the way I was raised, you are ready to interview at 9 a.m. You have already gotten up a half an hour ago to have your coffee and do what you need to do to be prepared. So that's the way I was raised, and that's the way I've conducted myself as far as my own interview processes over the years. So that is something that comes up a lot. Another thing that I have
What do you do? So Jude, or Alex, in that situation,
Sure.
you're calling me and it's 9 o'clock and I say, Alex, can you give me 10 minutes? I'm just getting up. How do you, because I appear to be on paper a good candidate, and you have to give everybody, or most people have the mindset that they give everybody a second chance. So you take the 10 minutes and then you call me back. What's the conversation like in that? Do you go back and provide some coaching, or do you pretend like it didn't happen? I mean, because one of those is going to set up a different, or one of those could set off, I know we're talking, watch your words, could set up a different conversation or environment when you have that conversation. So how do you do that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I would say, if I'll call you back 10 minutes, give that person, you know, time to wake up. And then before I even take the time to coach about it, I'm going to read the rest of the conversation and see how that goes first. You know, because if it's something where it doesn't seem that the person has any interest in being coached, or if they don't have an interest in career growth, or if they're giving off the perception that maybe they're not interested in learning from this experience or finding out more during the conversation, then you know what? That's on them, in my opinion. If you don't want to have this conversation, then we can keep it short and sweet, and best of luck to you. But if it's something where you do want to pursue the job and see what job options are out there that I can help you with, then absolutely, that would then become part of my coaching process. If we get to an interview stage, I will absolutely advise them, make sure that you are alert and get up an hour early to make sure that you do everything you need to do to be ready for the interview. Not be ready 2 minutes beforehand, be ready 15 minutes beforehand, you know, just go back to some basics. As well as just some basics about social interactions during an interview process. I don't care if it's over the phone, over video, or in person. There are social cues that people need to be aware of that we're, as the interviewer, picking up on, even if it's just over the phone. We're listening to how you conduct yourself. We're listening to how you are you sighing? And we can hear an eye roll through the phone pretty often, you know, we can hear a smile through the phone. And I think sometimes people forget those very, very small, basic things that read across to the person who's interviewing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jude, how do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, definitely. I have some great suggestions for y'all then. So in this situation, I would definitely invite you to think of it as it's sort of like a game that you have to play, right? You're going to be putting on different skins in different situations. You're going to be having a different type of ammunition for whatever you're targeting. So you're not necessarily cosplaying, but what you are doing is you're totally understanding the assignment and you're demonstrating to the person you're talking to that you get it. And you're playing your work avatar. So put yourself in your work avatar. Doesn't mean, like I said, it doesn't mean that you're disingenuous. It just means that you're showing a different side of yourself because you understand how to get to that point. So, yeah, so as Alex is saying, like play that role, like tap into that side of yourself where you are completely standing on business, you are ready to go, and you're demonstrating that you are superior above all the rest of the candidates.
And if I may just jump in real quick, I think something else that's important to keep in mind with the whole interview process is long-term thinking. Do you have long-term goals, or have you not figured them out yet? Because if you're thinking more from a long-term goal, so say I come from a sales background, so I'm going to use my experience. Say I'm interviewing for a sales manager job. However, my long-term goal is 5 years down the road, I want to be a director of sales. How am I going to present myself so that I look like a good candidate for a director position 5 years down the road? And I think that really helps people kind of keep in mind of how to, what Jude was saying, like your work avatar. What is me from 5 years down the road? What does that avatar look like? How do I envision myself 5 years from now when I'm in a hiring manager position, when I'm the one doing the interviews? So if you kind of envision yourself on a more of a long-term scale rather than just, oh, well, I'm only interviewing for an assistant manager position at McDonald's. But you know what? Is that what your end goal is? Do you want to stay just an assistant manager? And that's fine if you do. But if your goal is to eventually end up as a general manager or owning a McDonald's, you're going to want to think about who that person is of you. Who is that version of you 10 years down the line? I think that helps as kind of a guide of how you want to present yourself.
Yeah, you really touched on the present versus where a person wants to go. And in that coaching aspect that I know both of you do a lot of, that is, and I spend time doing a lot of coaching and teaching. It's getting the cohort now to have that mindset to positively think about what that future might hold for them in their professional career. Because we need, when you're interviewing, to get present, correct? But once you get present and you're interviewing, and I'm interviewing with Jude for a job, and we have a comfortable conversation, we have a mutual degree of listening and deep conversation, Jude's going to think, wow, I wonder if Greg wants to be here a long time, and say, Greg, so where do you see yourself in 3 years? And at that point in time, it's important to have, whether it's your, as I think you called it, an avatar, Jude, you have to have an honest answer of, I don't know, or I would like to go back to school, or I really see these as my opportunities. Because I learned, and I want you to share, because it seems to me in today's world, we become less willing to be vulnerable, to just say, I don't know.
Yep. Or
to say, you know, I'm scared of what I might be in 3 to 5 years, because, you know, I kind of want to get married. You know, this job may not pay me enough. Whatever the case might be, that's getting to the interviewer by being honest in that way. Because you, at least in my opinion, I want you to your feedback, both of you, because that means they're coachable. That means that they're trying to become invested in something to have a better life. And that's why, in the vein of what we're doing with the roundtable today, trying to get to people versus preach to people. Does that make sense, Jude?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So being coachable is one of the skills that we love to see. So when we are opening that invitation to y'all, then my recommendation is engage with that. Like that's an opportunity for me to learn about myself, for you to learn about you. This is an open dialogue engagement type of partnership. So definitely think of it as a partnership, not necessarily that we're trying to preach at you, but we're just trying to like give you a couple skills that maybe we picked up along our journey and experience that's going to be super helpful. So just be receptive to that. And as Greg was saying, like being vulnerable, that's the new in, and that's okay. You still, once again, just being able to present it in a professional way. So say what you're feeling and say what you're thinking. Kind of also, how are you delivering it and presenting it?
No, that's great. Alex, you have anything to add on that one?
Oh, yes, I absolutely do.
I saw you writing, so I knew something was coming.
When am I ever short on words? You know, I always have something to add. You know, I think to Jude's point of being vulnerable, it's okay to not know. It's okay to be vulnerable. I think having a level of self-awareness is something that's really impressive to employers because it shows that you understand you don't know everything. None of us know everything. None of us, even with 30 years of experience, we still don't know everything, which is why I really stress that there is something to learn from everyone. It doesn't matter what generation you're in. It doesn't matter what age, what cultural background. There is something all of us can learn from one another because at the end of it, we're all humans. We're all mammals, you know, and we're all sharing the same planet. I would like to share my own personal experience. You also never know when one of your superiors might recognize a skill in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself yet. And
100%.
The experience that I have with this is, you know, I lived in California working in the film industry, totally casting and production, totally different than what my career ended up being. And when I moved to Massachusetts for family reasons, I had no experience in the hotel industry, but I was looking for a part-time job. So I walked into a hotel, spoke with HR, and before I knew it, 2.5 hours later, we were still chatting. And the director of HR said, "Have you ever thought about sales?" Sales had never been on my radar. And I said to him, "You are crazy. I don't trust salespeople. Salespeople are shady. That is so not my personality." And he just looked at me and he said, "Alex, I'm not sure you quite know what you're talking about yet." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm 23. Of course I know this." And so, you know, I ended up just listening to what he had to say and asking him, "Well, why do you think that I would be good at sales?" And because he obviously saw something in me that I did not yet recognize in myself. And so after many conversations, there was multiple people pushing me to try doing sales for the hotel. So I just said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And then before you knew it, I fell in love with it. You know, and my career just took off because they saw something in me that I had no idea about. And I'm really grateful for having that experience. It was a humbling experience because I think I needed a little bit of a slap in the face to remind me that I don't know it all, because my perspective of sales was completely wrong. It was completely wrong. And it gave me a really wonderful career and I've made a ton of friends through it. But if it wasn't for me, I had to be receptive to receiving that information and receiving that coaching, because I went into sales having no clue what I was doing. And I had to rely on my superiors and my elders in different generations to school me in order for me just to learn the basics. And of course, as my career progressed, I would contribute my own opinions about how I think the sales has changed from when my boss used to do sales. We used to have a lot of challenging conversations about the sales approach because I thought that his approach was not ideal for my personality and what my perspective of what a customer is. So it's okay to have those challenging conversations as well, as long as you make sure it's not one-sided. You need to keep your ears open and have some self-awareness as well, I think, to see what other options might be out there for your career. You just never know. You just never know, honestly, which is also why it's so important to not burn bridges. But yeah,
Absolutely.
my own personal experience with this.
I think the element that you touched on and Jude opened that conversation was you have to be vulnerable and be willing to accept the perception somebody else may have of you, in most cases a constructive, because you need to realize that your perception in the world isn't the perception that you have of yourself in most cases.
Right.
And the reason is because everybody interprets things differently, right?
Yep.
So, well, listen, is there anything else you'd like to add on this this conversation today, Jude?
Yeah, I want to give some tips and tricks for folks that are listening. Now that we've talked about all this, it's like, okay, great, what do I do with it kind of thing?
Yeah.
So going back to the very, very beginning, being prepared for that phone screening, because you have one shot at making that first impression. And I would say use the Mel Robbins. If any of you are into that self-help and like finding all those self-help gurus, then you might know who Mel Robbins is. Go ahead and YouTube or look on TikTok. But she uses the countdown 5 method. I absolutely love it. Had to use it this morning to get up on a Saturday morning. But if you're tricking your brain into thinking that something is about to happen, so something is go time, then count down. So let's pretend I'm asleep right now and I'm like, oh my God, I have to get ready for this meeting. I'm going to do 5. I'm going to say it out loud. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What comes after that? Blast off. It's time to get your feet on the ground and get going. So scheduling yourself 30 minutes early to get ready and get that coffee in hand is great. And it's perfectly fine to be sipping your coffee while you're on the phone. We're all working from home these days or having some type of hybrid type of position. Other things, real quick, your vision board, that needs to be your goal board too. Definitely recommend putting your questions. Go ahead and Google the top 10 interview questions, because most of the time those top 10 interview, whether it's a high level position or low level, go ahead, write those down, practice them with a friend, practice them in front of a camera, playing it back, whatever it is. I'm getting really super comfortable being in that interview seat. And then in terms of the vulnerability aspect, ask this one question. I bet you're going to get some great feedback, but it's, can you teach me? Or asking it to the interviewer, you would say something like, how receptive is this employer to teaching and training? So if I don't know a skill, it's a very powerful ask. And see how that conversation goes.
Absolutely.
That's outstanding.
And
Alex?
if I can just piggyback off of something you said, Jude, something that has come up just this week a lot with my conversations that I've been having, not with candidates, but with hiring managers and people who are hiring. So much of the focus, because of the challenges they're having with the younger generations, a lot of what was conveyed to me this week especially was that they are now hunting, employers are hunting for the right personality. They are hunting for the right personality because they are looking for, they know that with the right personality, you can teach the skill. You can train somebody to learn how to operate the cash register. You can teach somebody.
Likability.
Yep, exactly. And so a lot of it now is coming down to personality. They want somebody who is going to be able to receive the constructive criticism side. And I wouldn't even put criticism in that term, you know? Yeah.
Constructive coaching.
Constructive coaching. Perfect. There you go. So, you know, they're looking for people who have the work ethic. They're looking for people who have the motivation and the ambition and the patience to understand that they don't know everything and that you're not going to get a promotion in 3 months. Because you're not going to get a promotion just by showing up for 3 months and yay, oh, I deserve a trophy. It's not that, that's not how it works. You know, you need to show that you are motivated to keep learning and keep growing and keep building on your own skills. So it's also taking a bit of a pivot with the younger generation, that people aren't just as focused on experience. They're focused on your personality and having that level of self-awareness and some of that vulnerability to recognize that, okay, I haven't done this, but I want to learn how to do this. And I want to be able to contribute because this is where I see myself going in 10 years, you know? So there's a lot of that is happening. And the other thing that I suggest is, have you ever, maybe people are unaware of what they come off as. I mean, I know everybody does selfies and you take your selfie videos, but it's not the same as when somebody is on the other side of a camera looking at you, or if somebody's in a face-to-face interview. So I would definitely recommend video yourself.
Yes.
Video yourself and see
Play it back.
how you actually come
Yep.
off, because it's not the same as taking a selfie. So don't be afraid to do that. Do it just by yourself in your bedroom where nobody else is watching, and fake interview yourself. Just see what your body language is, what your eye contact is like, and just play it back, and it might surprise the heck out of you.
And you might start your own channel on TikTok too. Like if you're practicing and evolving and you're learning a lot about yourself in the process and in that journey, then it's helpful content for other folks that are in the same position.
That's a great point.
Exactly right.
Share
I
the
can tell you after this roundtable this week, we're going to be having a lot of senior managers approaching us because we all seem pretty coachable. But anyway, oh, well, listen, I appreciate everybody getting together again this week for our roundtable. I think it's important for our audience to realize we're passionate about employment. We're passionate about helping people, and we take our responsibility seriously, and we appreciate any type of feedback, and look forward to reaching back out to you again next week. Alex, Jude, have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Bye.